Welcome to Prime Suspects. Alongside Adam Bjorn and Prime Sports co-founder Joe Brennan Jr., I'm your host, Matt Landis. Adam, last week we all sided with Seattle, so this was supposed to be our victory lap, but for you it's a Super Bowl hangover because the night before the game, you went on the unabated super stream with Captain Jack Andrews and took New England minus 10.5. What happened there?
At 10-1. Like, come on. I mean, it was one little snippet. And I'd been saying with Matt on BVB live from Super Bowl Media Center, I will say, one hell of a day, 3 hours live stream, a lot of fun, interviewed some great people. Really I think I'd like to do it some more. So anyone out there looking for a, interviewer to get out there, and I'd definitely look to do more of that stuff. But for that, I'd been saying Seahawks, 2 to 3 touchdowns for 3 hours. I said it over and over. However, all the people sitting on the other side of the table, and then Matt the following day as well, was literally 9-0 Seattle. So I was looking at it from more of a contrarian view, sort of searched around, saw minus 10.5. It was like plus 10.05 or something like that. And figured, you know what? Just in case, let me throw this in. And it was about an hour before I went on the unabated stream. But the game played out. The only thing that I would have liked is a few more points for it to go on over. I'd been looking at that number thinking it was over, and I'd played some alternates on the over. I had like minus 21.5 Seattle, minus 14.5 Seattle, and a bunch of that stuff as well. So it is what it is. I did not see a single snap of the game. The only part of the Super Bowl I saw was Natasha in a panic when I said, oh, it's halftime. And she said, it's halftime. I need to be watching Bad Bunny. What the hell's going on? And then she's searching on the phone. We're looking for it. We got on our Peacock account, as she saw, 10, 15 minutes of it. And, that was her Super Bowl completed. And then we went back to driving. We ended up on 17-mile drive down Pebble Beach. Found out that Pebble Beach A&T tournament Prime is this week. If I had known that, I would have changed my schedule and spent the whole week here in the Monterey area. But so it goes. Football season done. What's next?
And Joe, with football season being done, if this is our collective victory lap on the heels of our picks here last week, the biggest victory lap belongs to you, not only picking Seattle to win comfortably, but nailing Kenneth Walker for MVP. First running back to do so since Terrell Davis 28 years ago in Super Bowl 32. And unlike Adam, you stuck to your guns, doubling down on Walker for MVP on the Super Stream. People may be saying it was a boring game, but based on how well your predictions played out, just how much of a joyride was it for you?
Beforehand, that 10.5 thing that he went with New England scared the living shit out of me. Thank you. Because it was so contrarian. I'm looking at it like, oh God, who did he and Gary Vee run into at the Chappelle show? And what the hell did they tell him that he went with that contrarian pick? So I might have accidentally on purpose seeded just a couple of bucks on that one out there in some of the smaller sports books. But no, I think on the show last week I said I thought it was going to be a double-digit Seattle victory, and it was. I think that in the end, New England ran up against reality. They had the second weakest schedule for the regular season. They had the most fortunate path through the playoffs. Drake May, you know what? All the best to you, buddy. He got found out yesterday. And yeah, hats off to the Seattle defense, because that's what it's all about. It's great that Kenneth Walker got that MVP award from me. But again, very much like last year, if they could give the MVP award to a defensive line, last year they should have given it to the Philadelphia defensive line. And this year they probably should have given it to the Seahawks defensive line.
And Adam, before we dive a bit deeper into the results for the book, I know you didn't watch any of the game, but once you had a chance to look at the box score, any takeaways from the game itself in terms of how your bets may have played out along the way?
I didn't even know who won MVP until Joe just said it then. That's how closely I've looked at this. I've not looked at the box score. I have no idea how my bets went. I have zero clue. Going into that, I was searching tickets. Saturday night, I saw it was down to about 3,500. Someone sent me a message yesterday saying they'd seen them, in the 2,000 range. These were probably the two teams that I just had the least interest in watching or any of that sort of, aspect of it. So I don't know how my bets went. I know how the book went, but that's where I'm sitting right now. I know what the final score was. I definitely know that. I did see that at the end of the game.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and walk you through my viewing experience as a bettor, and I was tracking things pretty obsessively in real time, so we took very different approaches here, but I'm curious to see how it tracks with your experience on the bookmaking side of things. because when Seattle scored to go up 19-0 early in the fourth quarter, this was on track to be perhaps the most profitable game of my life as a bettor, only for all hell to break loose and the final play of the game leaving me relieved to have turned any profit whatsoever. Most of the fourth quarter, I felt like every time I blinked, I was losing a bet that looked great for the majority of the game. I had Matt Collins under 2.5 receptions. That went over, blowing up a flyer on Cooper Kupp most receiving yards at 14-1 along the way. Drake May under 35.5 rushing yards was my signature prop for the game, so that one stung the most. Also had May no interception, under 1.5 interceptions in the game, and I was surprised to see after the fact that Nwosu's pick six was ruled an interception, not a fumble recovery, but guess they got that one right looking back at the tape. Overall, I just felt like I was taking haymaker after haymaker, but garbage time did get me home on May pass yards over, as well as Travion Henderson receiving yards over. So I know I've got to take at least some good with all the bad there. All this to say, Adam, I feel like Super Bowls tend to be good for books and sharper bettors when the game is uneventful. So when chaos kicked in, as evidenced by the fourth quarter outscoring the first three quarters combined by a margin of 30-12, how did that affect the bottom line across Prime Sports and BetCris?
We had a good Super Bowl and would have loved it for that last touchdown that I'm hearing about now. Didn't know about it yesterday going over, because Seattle and over was the spot for everyone to be for us. Everyone had been talking about low scoring game, felt like a low total. There was even at one point we were going through like first touchdown score and things like that. And I did sort of make a comment about, well, no touchdown actually looks like a big price. And halfway through that game, I'm going, oh boy, God, I hope there's a touchdown somewhere in this thing, so I don't feel sick about that little comment and not getting on it. But books did well. As I was watching the score, it felt safe. I mean, it never looked like at any point was New England going to come back and catch up or backdoor cover or anything of that nature. It was just trying to get those points. And as they started to pile up in the last quarter, it was like, okay, here we go. Keep going, one more. And then the hope was that New England would just score that touchdown at the end, still cover, go over, and everything would have just been perfect. But can't complain. It was a green weekend, green day, and we'll just accept it as it is and move forward. And then looking deeper into the props and the results on that, they were good results as well. So I imagine a bunch of those turned sort of in late in the game to our benefit as well, based on a lot of people playing it as a dead under game. And then towards the end in that last quarter and all that back and forth up and down the field, a few of those things flew over that weren't expected to.
And I think you touched on endgame a bit there. I'd like to dig in a bit further because I could see a case where maybe it wasn't great, Seattle being the firm favorite, dominating from start to finish, so maybe bettors just kept pounding the Seahawks. But I could also see a case where it wasn't so bad, since as dominant as Seattle was, New England was still within 2 scores with plenty of time left in the fourth quarter, arguably at that point having more of a pulse than it deserved, keeping Patriots bettors active in supporting the underdog. So, Adam, how did in-game betting net out for you yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, they come for New England second half as well. They were betting it to come back to closer to where the closing line was. Again, that last touchdown would have been a hell of a lot nicer for it to really have been a blown out. But it just seems like they thought this thing was going to come back. They were playing dead under. At one time when I saw the total was around 32.5, it looked like there was still more under bets coming than over bets. So I think they just played it hard. And I mean, the course of the betting over the 2 weeks was they really come hard in New England early. The pros are on Seattle. I was calling it a day to play early, thought we were on track. Friday, Saturday morning, I woke up, look at the chart. The amount of money that came in on Seattle just Friday, balanced the books, put it all even, and it was like, okay, no day to play. Then woke up, looked at the charts Sunday, 3 hours before the game, and so much New England money had come in over the course of that 24, 36 hours that it was, and master money on the Seahawks, that it was just for all the, looking at these charts, looking at everything, the way it's played out. Now, yeah, money line, huge Seattle money would have, been a point where in those spots, the underdog winning outright is a good result. But even then, there was so much on the spread on New England that this was just a standout play. And looking at it there was only one way to go. So the only concern I had was these, 3 points, 3 points, 3 points. So it was only going to take one touchdown coming the other way to sort of square it up. So many times they were getting in the opportunity to get a touchdown and only coming away with 3 points. That so often turns ugly and heads back the other way. But they kept chipping away. They finally got that touchdown. And from there on, it just sounded like there was, no comeback and nothing going to happen from there. So the only thing left then was, is there any chance you can get it over? And going into the fourth quarter, it felt like none. However, if we look back through all the games through the season, so many fourth quarters with 20, 30 points. And you just thought, well, maybe there's a chance, but just needed that one more score to get it over. And it would have been, I think, an all-time record result.
And one more question for you, Adam, to tie a bow around football season. Selfishly asking this for me, as well as other bettors who are fortunate to have a good season from a betting standpoint, a final task being to collect on winnings. I feel like to the extent that winning bets can be a science, withdrawing from accounts can be an art, in the sense that at certain books, how and when you withdraw can affect things like limits and account longevity. So how do Prime and BetCris review accounts when customers request withdrawals? And based on this, what's your advice to bettors looking to get paid right now?
Well, if I go back in time, a lot of those books, I had my money out well before the Super Bowl because I wasn't going to be hanging around and fighting that game post Super Bowl to be trying to get money out when they just decide, okay, they can slow pay, no pay, whatever kind of pay it is. I mean, the expectation is that people make a run on their, post Super Bowl. Doesn't necessarily say what kind of player they are. It might be the people that actually leave it in there. You go, okay, well, that's odd. They're obviously sticking around. They know what they're doing. They're looking to turn this into something more of that nature. But we're not looking at that stuff too much. I know there's probably other books out there that do take a gander at it and sort of wonder what those in and out flows are. But the idea is make sure that if you're betting on the Super Bowl, that you're betting as many safe, regulated books that there are, because I've lived that. I've had many of them not be there a week after Super Bowl was completed. So yeah, that's been a game for a long time, was just getting out early, late December, early January out of a lot of outs.
All right, with that, we'll pivot from withdrawals to acquisitions, with Next.io reporting last week that data provider Genius Sports has agreed to acquire sports media business Legend in a transaction valued at up to $1.2 billion. As Next.io noted, Legend provides a scaled media platform with marketing technology, powering owned and operated digital properties, as well as syndication of sports and betting content across major publications such as Sports Illustrated and Yahoo Sports. Genius has said the deal would give it a unique structural position as the only company operating complementary businesses across official sports data, as well as media and advertising. Adam, what do you make of this deal, especially as it relates to that last piece of one of the primary data companies now getting into marketing?
Yahoo Sports is still around. I haven't checked that thing out in a long time.
That might be one for Joe to speak to.
Yeah, I'd almost follow up with Sports Illustrated. Do they still run the...
You were going to say that. Oh, my God.
No, listen, it seemed odd. The funny sequences of it was, I had my first call at like 5:30 this morning. While I was doing the call, I was clicking on links. I saw this link that been sent through pre-show of the acquisition. I'm reading it and I'm thinking, how does this make any sense? This is weird. What are they trying to do? And I noted that it was done on the 6th of February. And then I clicked a 5th of February. Clicked on another link and it said, Genius stock tanks 28%. I'm going, okay, now it makes sense. I don't know what the goal is. It was kind of a conversation this morning on this topic was, I know lots of places out there are trying to just buy eyeballs, buy attention, buy, things. Are they looking to get into the B2C space and they just bought a database? Maybe. Do they have the ability to sort of go in and compete in that space? Doubt it. It seems like it's completely outside of their zone in a sense of, is it, hey, we're not doing too well over here, or this is what, and this is something to sort of, boost profits or boost bottom line. It's something that the last few years I've been trying to learn and educate on. Why do companies do certain things? It seems like public companies do it just so they can have a headline, and maybe it's been a while since they had a headline. But yeah, I mean, it's a big database. It's an expensive database. Isn't there cheaper ways to go do it? And they're kind of some old branding, which I know there's kind of a historical cyclic event where, old brands can come back alive and there's some nostalgia and whatnot. So maybe they're looking to pick up some old Yahoo Sports followers and get them back in the game or whatnot. But it was a weird one. And the 28% drop in their stock price kind of answered what I thought I was reading in the first article. But again, why prices go up and down, that's becoming a mystery as well.
Well, Joe, as Adam touched on, investors responded negatively to the deal. What's your point of view on this, and how warranted did you find the investor response?
I mean, at one, I think the investor response is justified because it's not like they did something unique. You know, you had Sport Radar did the same thing with XL Media. You've had Barstool, ESPN Bet. We've had no lack of, operators getting into it directly with FanDuel TV, DraftKings buying VSiN network. All those, to some extent or another, failed. They did not do well. And so for Genius Sports to come in and say to the marketplace, we've got our next evolution is going to be expanding into direct affiliate media and everything like that. To me, if I was an analyst sitting on the other side of it, like, do you guys not have a Bloomberg terminal? Can you guys not read? There's enough historical evidence on this one that this move does not really pan out. The other thing that I think that the market reacted strongly to is like, look, they are in the data business. They're in the data and odds business. And what are they saying about their data and odds business that this big acquisition is? We're going to become affiliate in media. It's almost like they're bailing on their core product. Now, their core product is, it has some miles on it, could use some improvement, looking for ways that they're going to take the next step in data, because I don't think there's anybody who disagrees how important a role data, fast, clean, reliable data has in our industry for all parties concerned, not only us, the operators, it does for the players, everybody. And so for their move, their investment, maybe to the tune of like 1.2 billion, although I wouldn't expect right now with the reaction that you've seen from the market that you're going to see that top out at that number. It just says like affiliate has been crapping out. Publicly traded affiliate companies have crapped out across the board. Things like search affiliates, like search is changing because of AI. The nature of that is changing. There's so many tired strategies. And as Adam pointed out, tired brands. Although shout out to our boys at Covers, always love them, right? It smacks of like, I don't know if it's quite desperation, but certainly a lack of creativity and imagination. And it's essentially kind of signals that they're bailing to a certain extent on their core product when it comes to how are we going to grow the company going forward. So when I saw it and it got pounded more than a quarter of its of its value in the market in the first couple hours, the market just bailed on this. And you haven't seen any dead cat bounce or anybody buying the dip or anything like that on this. This is a solid zero as far as the market's concerned. And if I was Legends, I'd be worried if there was a breakup fee written into their deal with Genius Sports right now, because if I was Genius, I'd say get out of this one as quick as possible.
And with that, we will get out of this segment and pivot back to the games on the field, on the slopes, and in the arena. Adam, the Winter Olympics are underway. What do you expect to see across Prime Sports and BetCris in terms of the events drawing the most action and overall significance of handle driven by the Olympics?
I'm not too optimistic about handle, but again, there's, some of those people with money in their accounts may just decide to keep playing and play some Winter Olympics action. For me, it's a lot of fun. I love the Summer Olympics. I love the Winter Olympics. Actually, I may enjoy the Winter Olympics a little bit more because I think you can find some good value in certain spots, and a lot of people haven't been doing their homework, whatnot, on that. As for, results or anything of that nature, again, generally lose as a sportsbook on the Olympics, but it's as much entertainment. And I think it's in a good time zone. I was watching some stuff this morning, and again, it's sports. It's competitive nature. I think us as gamblers, whichever side of the counter you're on, you want sports, you want to compete, you want to take bets, you want to place bets. And that's how we compete as non-athletes in our era of participating in sports. So expectations, very low, but again, it comes around every 4 years. And I think it's always a fun time for sports lovers to get involved, whether you're a summer or winter Olympics, fan. It just gives something different for everyone.
I want somebody to make me a market for George Mason University's own Ilya Malinin to win his second gold medal in men's figure skating after the team one that he won the other day. The most ironically named quad god for a guy who's 5'9" and he looks like he weighs $120. I want somebody to make me that market.
Well, to that end, Adam, as a betting bookmaker, to follow up on what you just shared, how would you suggest bettors approach the Olympics betting menu?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to pick your spots. Don't go too aggressive. Find some big odds that you want to sort of take some shots at, because there's opportunity there. Really, I think if you lay out the 2 weeks and work out what events you really like and which ones you've got spots after, there's no good finding anything, too juicy, too early, and then blowing the last 2 weeks of it. So I think it's a bit of a plan of depending on what your book is, what you know it is. I mean, I haven't checked, but are the prediction markets doing the Winter Olympics? Because that'd be a great place to be getting action these next few weeks on that, because someone behind the scenes is probably just grabbing a Bet Radar or a Bet Genius feed and just hoping that it hits, just to have some action up and some liquidity going on. So yeah, I think it's a good opportunity to try and build up your bankroll, because generally sportsbooks don't win on these things.
And Joe, we'll take things home with a final one for you today. Crypto.com has announced plans to allow users to bet on margin with its new prediction market app. And this could raise some eyebrows when it comes to responsible gaming. So I'd love your thoughts on where you stand on margin trading as a functionality that could get challenged and reversed, or one that could become the new table stakes for other prediction market platforms.
We're again living in an age where nomenclature is everything, right? Betting on margin. I don't know. I think we call that credit betting, don't we? So not exactly. I mean, when the CFTC chair and Brian Armstrong are all whining about innovation and everything like that, it just seems like they keep copying the betting industry's DNA and then just putting that little sheen of financial markets nomenclature on top of stuff that we already do. So credit betting. I got to tell you, I'm not as scandalized as one might think, because this is something that we looked into with Prime, in that we went to the state regulators and said, look, if we really want to do a good job of capturing more share of that street and offshore betting handle that we aren't getting right now, being able to offer stuff like crypto, we've talked about that many times before, but also credit. Now, credit at a certain level. What we proposed to New Jersey and Ohio and all was, somebody had to be above a certain financial benchmark in order for them to be eligible for doing it. It wouldn't be eligible for everybody on down the line. And this is one way where you can say, okay, well, if the states had been more adept, more agile, acted with greater speed to allow people to do these kind of things, but in a responsible way, they would be less challenged right now. People would see the state product as, every bit as competitive or every bit as good. And you wouldn't have this opening that you have for the prediction markets like you do. But the states didn't, okay? For a variety of reasons, but the states didn't. Right now, if the prediction markets can do this, and I don't think there's any reason why they can't, since they seem to be self-certifying and self-regulating, I think the biggest problem that they have is it's not just the betting on credit / betting on margin. That's the issue. It's that it's part of a bucket of issues that they have, is that they are self-regulated. Nobody's really minding the store. And when you add that to the fact that you've got 18-year-olds, not 21-year-olds, being the floor for people being able to bet on here and a number of other things, I just think it's striking a discordant note for them at a time when maybe walking or at least jogging would be a good idea for them. But they're in a full-out sprint, land grab right now to get everything they can before, who knows, maybe the music's over because of the courts, or maybe Congress acts on their behalf and finally amends the Commodities Exchange Act to do away with the anti-gambling language and permit them to do this. But in the end, I don't necessarily think it's a bad play. It just you have to be a certain level customer, I would imagine, to do this. But nobody's seen the details yet, have they?
And with that, we will go ahead and wrap up this week's episode while acknowledging to the audience that football season may indeed be over. But as evidenced by the Olympics being in progress, baseball, the World Cup being on the horizon, basketball and hockey seasons being in full swing, not to mention golf, tennis, and more, the sports betting calendar never sleeps, and we're not going anywhere. So thanks as always for tuning in, and we'll catch you again next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Prime Suspects. Register for Prime Sports at primesports.com and download the Prime Sports app. You can follow us on Twitter at PrimeSuspects_, at Joe Brennan Jr., and at Adam Bjorn 2. You must be 21 or over to play on Prime Sports. Always bet responsibly and within your limits. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.